Please subscribe to the Hobbycraft channel and press the bell icon for notifications of future videos. Using a 29cm 41 peg loom, create a slip knot and attach it to the anchor peg. To cast on, wrap each peg. Continue wrapping like so until you reach the last peg. Wrap each peg in the same way once more, with each wrap being placed above the first. Now begin knitting off, starting with the last peg you wrapped. Slide your loom hook underneath the bottom first loop and then lift it over the peg and the loop above. Continue knitting off until you reach the final peg. After 4 rows, your work should be secure, so you can remove your slip knot from the anchor peg and place on the inside of your loom. Continue working until you reach double the length of your desired brim length. I did 15 rows, but feel free to customize your brim length as you like. Find your first row and place the first loop of each peg on the peg, folding your work. Knit off each peg to close up the brim. To change colour, create a slip knot in your new colour and attach it to the peg. Cut your working yarn with enough of a tail to tie to your next colour. Using the cut tail of the working yarn and the tail of your slip knot, tie a double knot as tightly and close to the loom peg as you can. You can now remove and undo the slip knot. You can now continue working as you did for the brim to create the top part of the hat. Do as many rows as you need to achieve your desired hat height. I did 16. To cast off, cut your working yarn. To measure how much you need to cut, wrap your working yarn over the top of every peg on the loom. Cut the yarn a few pegs further than your first to ensure you have enough yarn to cast all the way around. To cast off, slide the hook under the loop on your next peg. Pull the working yarn up and through the loop so that the whole tail comes through. Pull the working yarn to tighten. Simply repeat for each peg. You can start removing loops from pegs you've casted off once you're a few loops ahead. Once you've cast off every peg and the hat is removed from the loom, pull the tail tight to cinch the hat closed. Sew up tightly and secure with a knot. Attach your pom-pom to the top of the hat and sew in any ends. Using a 14cm 21 peg round loom, make a slip knot and attach it to the anchor peg. Wrap each peg. Turn and U-wrap, which is a half wrap, and knit each peg by lifting the bottom loop over the peg. Your cast on is now complete. To start row 1, turn and skip the first peg, purl each peg until you reach the last. To purl, slide the hook under the existing loop and pull up a new loop. Then lift the original loop from the peg and place the new loop in its place and pull your working yarn to tighten. To complete row 1, do a regular knit for the final peg by half wrapping the peg and knitting by lifting the existing loop over. Starting row 2, skip the first peg and E-wrap a full wrap of each peg and then knit off. After a few rows, your work should be secure so you can remove your slip knot from the anchor peg and place on the inside of your loom. Repeat rows 1 and 2 for your desired length. I did 85 rows. To change colour, finish with a purl row. Create a slip knot in your new colour and attach to the next peg. Cut your working yarn with enough of a tail to tie to your next colour. Tie a double knot as tightly and close to the loom peg as you can. You can now remove and undo the slip knot. Continue working row 1 and 2 for another 86 rows. Cast off style 1. Wrap the second peg and knit off. Move the loop from the second peg to the first peg and knit off. Move the loop from the peg you just knitted off to the next peg. Use cast off style 1 for all pegs apart from peg 2, peg 12 and peg 23. Cast off style 2 for pegs 2, 12 and 23. Wrap the first and second pegs and knit both off. Move the loop from the second peg to the first and then knit off. Move the loop from the first peg to the second peg. Continue to cast off each stitch. Top tip: work cast off style 2 every so often to make the cast off edge looser. Now repeat the whole process for as many panels as you want, depending on the size of your blanket. At the end, sew them together using mattress stitch. Using a 29cm 41 peg loom, create a slip knot and attach to the anchor peg. To cast on, wrap each peg. Working in the opposite direction, you wrap by half wrapping and knit by lifting the existing loop over the peg and putting the new loop on each peg. You have now completed the cast on. For row 1, turn to work in the opposite direction. To do this, make a figure of 8 motion between the first and the second peg. This goes round the front of the first peg and round the back of the second. Step 4 should lead you into an E-wrap, which is a full wrap, which you can now repeat the whole way around the loom. Then knit off each peg. After this row, you may remove the slip knot from the anchor peg. Now begin row 2. Skip the first peg, then purl each peg apart from the last one. To do a purl stitch, place your hook downwards through the existing loop on the peg and pull up a loop from your working yarn. Then take off the loop that is attached to the peg and replace it with the new loop that you have created. For the last peg, do a normal U-wrap knit and then you can use this to turn. Now repeat rows 1 and 2 until you achieve the desired width of your ear warmer. I did 12 in total. After you finish knitting your last row to repeat, you are ready to cast off. Cast off style 1. Wrap the second peg and knit off. Move the loop from the second peg to the first peg and knit off. Move the loop from the peg you just knitted off to the next peg. Use cast off style 1 for all pegs apart from peg 2, peg 20 and peg 40. Cast off style 2 for pegs 2, 20 and 40. Wrap the first and second pegs and knit both off. Move the loop from the second peg to the first and knit off. Move the loop from the first peg to the next peg. You should now have one loop remaining. Cut your yarn with a long enough tail to sew together your ear warmer. Pull working yarn remaining through the loop on the peg and remove from the peg. With right sides facing together, fold both cast on and cast off ends in half and slot together. Sew in place through all 4 layers. Sew in ends, turn right side out.